Let's bring in Joel Payne and Joseph Pinion. Joel is a Democratic strategist and Joseph is a Republican strategist. So, Joseph, we've seen other tell-all books about the Trump administration before. They've made news for maybe 1 or 2 days. But do you think the release of this book could be different given that we're in the middle of an impeachment inquiry?
No. I just think that, again, it's good for people who like to read books. I think it's confirmation bias for the individuals who say, aha, there's something afoot and there's something strange going on in that building there called the White House. But I think for vast swaths of Americans, again, as we see, book sales are down because people are not reading. They didn't read the Mueller report. They haven't read most of the books that have been told about this administration. And I don't think they're going to read this one either.
So you think it'll fall flat. Joel, do you think Democrats should be strategizing around what this book may say?
No, I don't. And here, so I agree with Joseph in the sense that I think that there's a lot of written material out here about this administration. I don't think there's a game changer out there other than somebody, catching the president like firsthand account doing something inappropriate or impeachable. That said, I do think the impact that this is going to have is it's just going to create more buzz and it's going to create the type of environment that I don't think this White House needs around impeachment. You have more firsthand accounts of people who actually work in this administration talking about the chaos that the administration is. That is not a good thing. I do not think that that is going to change attitudes broadly around the country. I think it probably matters more for people like myself, Joseph, and those on Capitol Hill.
All right. Well, based on what you both just said, I feel like I already know the answer to this next question. But the first public hearings in the impeachment inquiry begin next week before the book comes out. So, Joseph, based on the messaging around this book and what we've seen from impeachment so far from Republicans, what are you anticipating we will hear from GOP lawmakers next week?
I mean, we'll hear the same thing that we've been hearing, that this is happening behind closed doors, that we have these control leaks where we get all the stuff that they think makes the president look bad and none of the stuff that actually makes him look good. I mean, I think, I was talking to a friend the other day who said, look, there are probably 3 things in life you should probably remember. You remember when you met the love of your life, when your children are born, and if you actually engage in a quid pro quo on behalf of the president of the United States. That's not the type of thing that you forget. And so I think, again, most Americans and I think most people on the right side of the aisle will say that, look, this impeachment process has been bungled from day one. Democrats are really trying to relitigate 2016 and also preemptively try to win 2020 because their candidates can't do it themselves. And that's really where we are at this point.
All right. And you're reiterating a lot of what we've heard from President Trump lately, which is that this is all a sham and a witch hunt. Joel, what about you, though, especially from Democrats who are running for president, some of whom will act as jurors in a potential Senate trial if they have to vote to impeach the president?
Well, I think the part that's most interesting to me, and I do disagree with Joseph here, I think that Republicans are starting to tell a different story. And I think it's because they're searching for room for how best to defend this president. They can't defend him on the facts. They can't defend him on the quid pro quo piece. I mean, you've had Trump appointees. This is not the advisory board of the Democratic National Committee. These aren't Joel's liberal friends on my cell phone. These are Trump appointees, people who've given money to the president, people who were appointed by this president, loyalists to President Trump, who are corroborating the whistleblower account. So, like, the whistleblower issue and trying to reveal their identity, that's kind of a moot point at this point. Really what it comes down to is, do Republicans think that the president acted appropriately or do they think he acted inappropriately? That's the test. If Republicans want to spend the next 14 months, 13 months, whatever it is, defending this president, defending his actions, go right ahead. I don't think that's going to work out too well for them. While I don't think that the results of what happened in Kentucky earlier this week are necessarily indicative of what's going to happen to every Republican, I think it does demonstrate that this is not toxic for Democrats. This is not something that Democrats are going to be afraid to talk about on the campaign trail.
All right. And speaking of the election, Joel, the next Democratic debate is on November 20th. Former New York City Mayor Michael Bloomberg is actively taking steps to run for president. So how could his potential bid impact the field that's still pretty big?
I mean, we'll probably get a lot more ad spending. Whatever ad spending records have already been established this quarter or this cycle will probably be exceeded because he's got over $50 billion and he's going to have to spend a lot of that to actually catch up to all these other contenders. I don't think that this fundamentally changes the race in any way. What it signals to me is that there are probably a lot of people in the establishment of the Democratic Party who are concerned about Elizabeth Warren or Bernie Sanders taking the party too far to the left. And so I imagine that there's a certain segment of support behind someone like a Mike Bloomberg because Joe Biden has not taken off and his candidacy hasn't taken off in the way that a lot of moderates and center-left Democrats would have hoped. And so I think that this is a reaction to that. I think Mayor Bloomberg was certainly a successful, three-term mayor of New York City and someone who is a skilled public servant, but he's entering the field at a time where he really can't have much impact on it, particularly the early states. He can't be viable in Iowa, New Hampshire, South Carolina, and Nevada. And if you can't do that, I'm pretty sure you can't win the presidency.
All right. So let's end our discussion with this question that we love. Who has had a big week and who has had a bad week? And Joel, let's start with you.
So my big week goes to Amy Klobuchar. And look, I could have picked a couple of people. I wanted to give some shine to the senator from Minnesota because she has certainly struggled to kind of break out of the pack. I think that the thing that's remarkable here is that actually her numbers are starting to move. If you looked at the most recent public polls, both nationally and in some key battleground states, Klobuchar is consistently in that top 5 or 6 group that we kind of consider to be the tier A of the Democratic bracket. And I think that her poll numbers are moving in the right direction. She's had some good fundraising numbers of late. And I think she's going into this next debate later this month with a lot of wind at her back. So I think she's got to feel good about that. My bad week goes to Pete Buttigieg. And while I think certainly, it's so funny. I think last week I picked Pete Buttigieg having a good week, and now he's having a bad week. The week was great last week because he had a lot of great polling numbers, and it looked like he was really starting to be able to flex that organizational might in places like Iowa where the poll numbers are starting to catch up with the fundraising numbers. Here's the problem. He still does not have any African-American support. And if you are going to win the Democratic primary this time around, the heart of the Democratic primary runs right through the heart of Black America. So you've got to be viable in a place like South Carolina with Black voters. And all across the country, when you get out of, those kind of traditional, early, less diverse states, you've got to be able to put a diverse coalition together. Buttigieg is still struggling to do that.
Very interesting. He's got to definitely has to work on that. What about you, Joseph? What do you think? Who had a big week? Who had a bad week?
Well, look, I think a big week, I'm going to, fly in the face of many and say the president had a pretty good week. And not necessarily because of anything that he did, but because of the fact that the wheels are coming off the bus for the Democrats, right? You have Mike Bloomberg getting ready to possibly hop into his presidential race, which indicates what most people on the right have been saying, that the Democrats don't have a nominee that resonates with vast swaths of Americans, right? You have somebody like Pete Buttigieg who's climbing in the polls at the same time that Uncle Joe is lagging in 4th place, according to some polls, if polls are to be believed. He's out of time and out of money. And if you look at nationally, he is the person which Republicans will tell you at night when no one's around that he has the greatest threat to a Trump second term. When you look at the places where he is strong and the places where President Trump needs to do well. So I think the president had a pretty good week, again, because Democrats are really falling apart. I think bad week goes to Uncle Joe. Like I said, he is bringing up the rear at this point. He has been sputtering from day one, but now it looks like the gas tank is finally on E. The light is flashing, and he might get stuck on the side of the road. Kind of like, it's just going to be really difficult for him moving forward. And I think that's a really bad thing for Democrats because, again, the alternative is a woman with a $20 trillion fantasy plan for America. And realistically, all Republicans have to do is say there's no such thing as a free lunch. Blue-collar Americans know that. And at the end of the day, it's going to be a really, really sad situation here come Iowa, come South Carolina.
And you might be telling us next week that Biden had another bad week, especially if Bloomberg officially enters the race because he'll take that moderate position away from him.
I mean, not to be a conspiracy theorist, but it almost seems like Bloomberg's getting in the race to maybe finally finish off Joe once and for all, because the only place that the support for somebody like Bloomberg is going to come from would be from that moderate lane. And Joe Biden is going to need every last bit of gas in that moderate lane to get himself across the finish line.
I disagree, but I want Joseph to have a wonderful Veterans Day and happy Veterans Day holiday to everybody out there. Thank you for your service.
Thank you so much, Joel Payne and Joseph Pinion. Thank you so much.